On today's show, my friend Tyler Jones stops by for part one of a two-part episode. And also at the top of the show, some injury updates, the latest on John Collins and DeAndre Hunter, as well as what might happen for the Hawks on Friday against the Denver Nuggets at home. All of that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1359 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday evening, December 1st. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Check it out right now. BetOnline has all the latest odds, lines, and props you're looking for. BetOnline is where the game starts. And today's show will be myself and Tyler Jones. Part one of two that you're about to watch or listen to. Part two should be arriving shortly as you're listening to this podcast or already in your feeds at this point, no matter where you get your podcasts. And also, I want to encourage you to make the podcast your first listen each and every day. Check us out across podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, as well as on YouTube on the video side. And before I get to Tyler, a lot of news to touch on from Wednesday into Thursday. If you missed it, I was actually at the game down in Orlando, Hawks Magic on Wednesday, and covered that win in depth, as well as the injury stuff that happened to John Collins and DeAndre Hunter. That was the number one topic of the day. On Thursday, in between the two games, because the Hawks play again on Friday at home, the Hawks had an off day, actually, so no practice, but there were MRIs done for both John Collins and DeAndre Hunter, both of whom left the game in the first half. And if you want full coverage of that game, that podcast is still available for you right now. But finally, after a Shams Charania report kind of broke the seal a little bit, the Hawks announced on Thursday evening some updates for Collins and Hunter. First, on Collins, he actually, after MRI, was confirmed to have a left ankle sprain with an associated joint swelling. That's what the Hawks said there. And at this point, the Hawks are saying that he will be out, quote, at least the next 2 weeks, end quote. Now, from there, his return to play will be updated as appropriate. And I always say this, at least 2 weeks could mean 2 weeks, could also mean more than 2 weeks. So you cannot just pencil it in for 2 weeks. Also, it usually takes some time to kind of get up to speed again when it's an issue like this, like in your legs. Not going to have your same, be able to have the same wind and all that stuff as well. So I would always say do not assume he's back in 2 weeks at this point in time. We'll have more on that in a second. As for Hunter, he had an MRI as well, and it was confirming a right hip flexor strain, and he'll be out, quote, at least 1 week, end quote, and then we'll be back after that. As for the kind of schedule, how it breaks down for the Hawks, we're all guessing a little bit. I will say the schedule is a little bit lighter for the Hawks in the next 2 weeks than it has been in the previous 2 weeks. Before the Orlando game, obviously, the only game that had really been kind of easy on paper was that Houston game they lost. But they have Denver, which is a tough one on Friday for sure. But then OKC on Monday. Then they have a road trip to New York against the Knicks and the Nets. Those are winnable games. They have to play the Bulls at home. They have also games later on, about 2 weeks from now. They have Orlando 2 more times and Charlotte. They have a stretch over a 6-day period when they play Orlando, Charlotte, Orlando. And then they have Chicago, Detroit, Indiana. So that's a pretty easy stretch at the end of December that could make this a little bit more palatable for the Hawks. But still, it goes without saying at this point, but definitely huge losses for both Collins and Hunter. We talked about this a little bit with Tyler. I won't belabor the point at this point, but Collins on defense has been his best of his career so far. And then Hunter, I think, has also been playing pretty well defensively as well. The one game that Hunter missed this year, the defense was notably worse in his absence. Now, he's not like a elite defender, but what they have behind him is not necessarily the same quality in terms of like physicality and also just acumen defensively. So it's big. The second half of the game on Wednesday, the Hawks were without their top 4 power forward options. These are their 2 starting forwards. And if you lose those guys for at least a week at the same time, that kind of magnifies it because you're down 2 guys and you have to alter rotations and all that stuff. So some challenges up ahead for Nate McMillan and the staff. Before I get to Tyler, a look here at the Nuggets game on Friday, and they come to town a little bit banged up as well. Michael Porter Jr. will be out for the game for the Nuggets on Friday in Atlanta. He has a heel injury. They're probably not going to have Jeff Green either. He's actually listed as doubtful as well. Jamal Murray is probable to play for Denver, so I assume he will play. But Porter Jr. is a notable loss for the Nuggets. On the Hawks side, beyond Collins and Hunter, who are both out, obviously, Justin Holiday is still in the protocols at this point, so he'll be out as well. Notably, on the positive side, Bogdanovic has been upgraded to questionable. He was notably listed as doubtful on Wednesday. That was a change from the previous every game this season until Wednesday night. Questionable means questionable. He could play on Friday, or they could hold him out until Monday, but he's definitely getting closer by all indications. Jalen Johnson, also questionable. He was listed as doubtful in the previous game after missing the game before that. So he's been out for a little while. And with Collins out, obviously Jalen Johnson will be of great intrigue in this one. And then Clint Capela, unfortunately, if you are a Hawks fan, was added to the injury report as questionable with left foot soreness. I don't have any way of gauging how difficult that is at this point in time, but if he can't play, that'd be definitely troublesome. He's been awesome this year. And then Fred Kaminsky is actually questionable as well with a right foot sprain. So lots of front court injuries. In fact, the only front court guy on the entire roster that's a 4 or 5 that's not on the injury report is Okongwu. So, pretty tough sleigh in there for the Hawks in that way. We'll touch on a little bit of the rotation expectations in a second with regard to what they're going to do without Collins and without Hunter. But first, the Nuggets are traveling back from Denver, so not a huge rest advantage for the Hawks. Both teams played on Wednesday, but the Nuggets have to go a lot further back from Denver, other than back from Orlando, like the Hawks did, plus home court, of course, for the Hawks on Friday. Denver is not necessarily quite as good on offense without Michael Porter Jr., who is a really dynamic shooter, but the Nuggets have been awesome on offense this year in general. They're in the top 3 of the NBA in offensive rating at this moment, and in the top 5 in true shooting percentage. So basically, they've been awesome from a shooting and scoring standpoint this year. Basically, Nikola Jokic, the reigning MVP, is the biggest reason for all of that. He makes everything go for Denver. It's not a huge secret. If Capela can't play, that'd be really, really troublesome because Jokic makes life hard on everyone, but especially on Okongwu, who's a lot smaller than he is. A crazy stat from Denver. The Nuggets this year, with Jokic on the floor, have a plus 14.1 net rating. So basically, that's absolutely fantastic, like 65, 70 win kind of stuff with Jokic on the floor. With him off the floor, they have a negative 12.7 net rating. So basically, they go from the best team of all time, which is a plus 14 net rating, to one of the worst of all time without him. Now, that cannot possibly sustain, but maybe it can. It's been like a 3-year trend. So basically, if the Hawks do not win the non-Jokic minutes, that would be troublesome on this night. Now, defensively, they're not very good. That's a positive for the Hawks, of course, who've been struggling a little bit on offense recently. They're probably better defensively without Porter. That's notable because he's a pretty bad defender. But they are good as a rebounding team on the glass, on defense, as well as preventing free throws. But their shooting resistance is not very good. The perimeter stuff is definitely a little bit shaky. Murray's not a great defender necessarily. They've lost some defensive acumen on the perimeter. They do have Aaron Gordon, who's a pretty good defender at the forward spot. But yeah, this is a winnable game for Atlanta. BetOnline right now, it makes the game about a coin flip. The Hawks are maybe a 1-point underdog at this stage. They've gone back and forth the last couple of hours. But the Hawks are definitely going to be in a challenging spot without both Collins and Hunter in that game. As for questions that I was getting before we turn it over to Tyler about what the Hawks might do rotationally, it's going to depend a lot on who plays and who doesn't. So we're obviously going to cross off Hunter and Collins at this point. They're definitely out for at least a week each. Holiday also crossed off, and Justin Holiday, before he had one of the protocols, was the backup power forward. So that's notable as well with Jalen Johnson out. So Okongwu at center, very obviously, and we'll assume for this exercise that they're going to have Capela. If they have Capela and Okongwu, that's all the center minutes. At power forward, you basically have Jalen Johnson, maybe. He's listed as questionable. If he's not available, you have Jarrett Culver, who played there a lot. He's more of a 3 than a 4, but you can't play the 4 defensively. You have, basically that's kind of it in terms of like actual power forward sized individuals. They played Vic Krejci a little bit there. AJ Griffin is definitely stocky, but like you're comparing 3 and 4, you can throw AJ in there, throw Krejci in there. Trent Forrest played a little bit of 3 last night. They might have Bogdanovic, who can, I think, defensively could be a little bit more physical and play a little bit more 3-4 if you need him to. But the lack of size is very stark there if Jalen Johnson in particular cannot go. I don't know who they're going to start. I assume it will be AJ Griffin at the 3, but that's not exactly a definite. They started Vic Krejci in the second half on Wednesday. I think it'll be AJ if I had to guess, but we'll see how they approach that. Bogey, if he plays, I am sure, at least pretty sure that he'll be limited on some level. He'll probably won't play a ton of minutes in his first game back. So they have options, but basically the backcourt rotation won't change a lot. I expect it to be a lot of Trey and a lot of DeJounte with some Trent Forrest sprinkled in. But at the 3, you have, again, Griffin as the primary guy. You have guys like, Krejci, you have Culver, you have maybe Bogey, some at the 3 if he's available, and then same thing at the 4. So they're shorthanded, to say the least. And Denver has not huge size at 3 and 4, but Aaron Gordon is a big physical athletic player, and you can't just put a small on him because he will definitely mash that. So there's some questions there. The loss of Hunter and Collins will be felt for a while beyond tomorrow. But honestly, this is probably the most difficult matchup that they have for the next couple of weeks. They do have one road game in Memphis on December 12th. It's probably a little bit harder because it's on the road. But yeah, Denver is a good test point, especially with Jokic making life difficult on everybody on the opposition team. So we'll have full coverage of that game afterwards on Friday evening. I'll be in the building for that one, and that'll be interesting. But yeah, not the worst news, generally speaking, on Collins and Hunter. Yes, this is multi-game absences for both guys, but neither one was like ruled out for months or in surgery, all that stuff. These are injuries that are real and definitely more than nagging, but they do have timelines that are at least kind of roughly projected. And with Bogey coming back, that definitely helps a little bit if he's able to go on Friday or at least on Monday after the Hawks have the weekend off. All right, before we get to Tyler and a extensive conversation across two parts. Again, this is just part 1 of 2. So when you're done with this one, part 2 should be still available in your feeds. Before we get to all of that, though, a word from our sponsors on today's podcast. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline, and December is here now. The NBA season is in full swing with plenty of football, hockey, and other action going on as well. BetOnline is the number one source for all the wagering information you're looking for, as well as stats, news, and analysis this season. You can get the latest odds and trends for every pro and college league out there at BetOnline. That includes the latest in football, basketball, of course. They have soccer and esports and golf and tennis and auto racing, horse racing. World Cup stuff is definitely full swing right now as well, taking over the entire world basically when it comes to sports. And BetOnline is also very useful, engaging the latest on the Hawks. They have the latest odds and lines they're looking for, spreads, totals, money lines, also future stuff on the team side or individual awards. And BetOnline is also the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting fix. If you love sports podcasts, you can also find that at BetOnline as well. Check out BetOnline right now on your mobile device or your computer to learn more about all the trends and the action in the sports world. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am joined once again by my friend, frequent podcast contributor, general man about town, Tyler Jones is back. It's the start of December. I almost said November of December. Tyler, a lot has changed. Nothing has changed. However you want to feel about all things, but here we are on December 1st. How are we feeling?
Well, first I want to start. Have you seen Good Morning America recently?
Have I seen Good Morning America recently? I don't think I have.
Oh, really? But do you know anything about Good Morning America?
I have no idea where we're going right now. So this is going to be good.
You completely off left field. Wow. Okay.
I got nothing.
Now, just the host of Good Morning America are having a great time together.
Okay. Interesting.
So if you don't know about that, you should. It's just a fun little thing that's going on. Outside.
I never know where we're going at the beginning of the podcast. I was prepared for the Braves or the Falcons or whatever, and then we're going to Good Morning America, and I wasn't ready.
Good Morning America, yeah. It's I learned about it. I'm still sort of on Twitter. I learned, of course, I still get all my news through Twitter, but no, the hosts are just they got together, so
okay,
and they are married, so we have that sort of situation going on with them, and they literally just came to work today like nothing's wrong. So that is incredible. That's just a nice little spice.
Oh Lord!
Outside of that, Team USA is doing their thing.
See, I this is my one time every 4 years when I consume soccer, so I'm enjoying that. I watched the vast majority of the England match. I watched none of the Iran match because I was at work and couldn't watch it, but I was following. I was enjoying it.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Pulisic put it all on the line, so
I got the sense that you're not the biggest fan of his on Twitter.
He's okay. It's just one of those things where it's like, he's not my favorite. You know how people feel about Dansby Swanson on Braves Twitter. It's how I feel about Christian Pulisic.
Okay, I got that.
So leave it there.
Yeah, we can leave it there. It's fine. Obviously,
speaking of which, I did actually see Dansby at a polling place for early voting. So that's your funny.
That's your guy.
I didn't get a chance to say hi, but because we're like I'm in line. And he's like on the other side, like way over there. And I'm like, well, there's Dansby. So he was there. So that was cool. But we can start with the
He's participating in the process.
I really don't want to talk about this Hawks game, but we can start.
So I have some news, and we might even get more. In fact, I'm pretty confident even while we're talking, we'll probably get some more information. You and I are recording this at about 7:30 Eastern on December 1st. We just got the initial report from Shams Charania about John Collins. We'll come back to that as well. And I will probably have a prologue to this episode where I give you the latest. People may have already heard all the injury stuff, but that's what we know right now. We know that Collins is going to be out for at least 2 weeks. And then just so everybody knows what Tyler knows, what I know. We're going to hold off on the injury stuff till later in the podcast. I want to know how your vibes are right now, beyond the fact that they lost their starting forwards during the game that I was at in Orlando on Wednesday. The Hawks are 12-10, and that's okay on paper. And I've said this a few times, it feels like the vibes around the team, not necessarily with the team itself, but like with the fans in particular, and like how they have not played well. They just lost 3 games in a row. It wasn't going very well. It feels worse than 12-10, but I know how you feel during some of these games when you're blacking out and you're furious. But now with a full day between games in this calm setting, how are we feeling about the Hawks right now?
Well, it's about the same I felt about the Hawks last season, which is not great, but understandable, why they're in the place they're in. But like overall, I kind of feel like this is the same team. They just they swapped offense for defense, but like they didn't, the DeJounte Murray trade was supposed to be the trade that elevates them, and instead it's kind of put them exactly where they've been for a year and a half now, or a year and 20 plus games now. So not thrilled, but they've had stretches where they've played some good basketball. The Bucks, how they teams that rely solely on getting to the rim and finishing at the rim and finishing through contact. Like the Hawks have been elite Hawks have been noticeably great at just shutting like some of the best, finishers in the NBA down, like, or just really making them inefficient basketball players. Like they've done a great job on Giannis. I don't know if any teams defended Zion better than what the Hawks did when he came, when they played each other earlier this season. Like those have been impressive, and overall, like it's hard not to be impressed with the interior defense of what Capela, Collins, and Okongwu over the course of 22 games, what they've brought to the team. So that's exciting. The rest, I DM'd you the other day, Brad. These pull-up long twos are giving Dwight Howard post-ups. Like it's like I get the same feeling pit in my stomach when I watch the primary action for DeJounte Murray when he's coming off these pick and rolls is to settle for these mid-rangers. And I'm like, this cannot be the offense. Like it just.
Well, and it's also, I'm sure we'll get into all of this stuff, but like it's not just that they're taking mid-rangers. I know that you feel the same way I do. It's not just that. It's the way that they get to them, because Murray's always going to take he takes a lot of mid-rangers. He's kind of always done that, and he's good at it. But it's like they're hunting them is kind of maybe the bigger concern, and like also just the process of all of it, like especially down the stretch. We talked about fourth quarter net ratings and all this stuff, and they've kind of just gone to this very stagnant approach at times on offense, and that will get you frustrated in a hurry, especially because of what they're capable of when they have it going. Because we've seen first halves, even the games they were losing in the last week or so, they were moving the ball in the first half, and it was like, all right, why is the offense different now than it is in the fourth quarter, basically?
Well, it could be a couple things. I theorize that maybe playing DeJounte Murray and Trae Young 38 plus minutes every night isn't a good thing, and maybe they should be playing less, or the rotation should be different, because this fourth quarter thing, I mean, even against the Magic, it was the same, where they just, like, you can feel like the energy is out of the ball. Like, it's a lot of walking the ball up the floor, pounding the shot clock, making sure time goes off, which is fine if you execute, but they aren't executing. So it's like you're not giving yourself enough time in the shot clock to do the ball movement thing. So you're relying on brilliant one-on-one play. And when Trae Young and DeJounte Murray don't execute or don't make their shots, or, turn the ball over at the, weird turnover spells where they, even though the Hawks, I think, still statistically are top of the league at turnover rate, like they just have weird times where they would just give the ball away. And, it's, I don't know. It's just not fun to watch. I really wish Trae and DeJounte would work more off the ball and do more in general when they're operating as the primary creators. Like, it's just too much one pass. If they make one pass, they're not moving off their spot and they're not relocating. And it's really killing what the other guys on the floor can do. And, like, we're not getting that added value. Like, to me, I feel like we got DeJounte Murray, and he might as well, like, it's as if we didn't get, a borderline all-star caliber basketball player. It's like, from what we lost from Kevin Huerter, the 3-point shooting from Kevin Huerter, and like Murray defensively, he's been okay, but he's had stretches where he hasn't been good either. But over, like, to me, it's just weird. Like, it's just like, and I feel like this anxiety a lot of Hawks fans are getting is just, this team's not better. Like, I think that's my fundamental thing. Like, this team just isn't better than what they were when they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, or even last year. Like when they had their run, when they went like 33-12 or something like that. Like, they're not there. Maybe they get there, but it's like, it's the same team where they struggle against good competition or teams that know how to defend the Hawks' primary pick and roll action. And they kind of just don't have a plan B, don't have a plan C. Like, it's very disappointing to watch them on offense, is my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. And, beyond the broad strokes, because, like, look, the simple way that I've put it before is, there is no way a team, this is overly simple, I want to be clear about that. There's no way a team that was as good as they were last year on offense, or as good as they even were 2 years ago on offense, and it has had Trae Young, who's not playing fantastically individually this year. He was actually quite good last night, I thought, in Orlando. But they should not be a below average offense with Trae Young healthy for this long of a sample. I know it's not a huge sample size, but it's a quarter of the season, and they've been a below average offense. Now, they've been better than that with Trae on the court, but they were elite with Trae on the court previously. And the same issues, kind of similarly anyway, they've been bad with Trae off the court. Again, that was one of those things that's, like, supposed to be fixed by the Murray thing. And again, it's a small sample size, but, like, that's part of it. And look, this is also an arbitrary endpoint, but I'm going to throw this to you. Fourth quarter offensive rating this season. The Hawks are 28th in the league. They're scoring less than 104 points per 100 possessions in the fourth quarter. Now, there's some garbage time in there, I'm sure. That's the raw stats. But, like, it also matches the eye test, and that's when the worst impulses have come out, to your point before. Like, that's when they really get into the your turn, my turn, clear out, and that's the whole offense plan. The worst example of that was of course, the Houston game, when they got into the tit for tat with the Rockets guys, and it was like, now it's individual one-on-one game, and they were terrible defensively in that game, but offensively the fourth quarter was as bad as it gets. I implore people to watch that fourth quarter on offense. Just nothing happened. They played one-on-one and 2-on-2 for the entire half, especially the entire fourth quarter.
That game was so bad, I was like, they need to pull Onyeka off the floor because he's literally not doing anything. And it was like, it wasn't even like they literally. Did he touch the basketball that game? Like,
well, no, nobody did, to be fair. But yeah, Kong had a couple of weird games in there. We can talk about him later too if you want. But no, it is And,
No, but Brad, I want to talk about the Onyeka point now. But it's like he's had some weird games, yeah. But like, what's his role? Like, what's his offensive role on this team?
Well,
what's John Collins' offensive role?
I was about to say
Johnson's.
We've done the Collins thing so many times. You and I have done the Collins thing so many times, but it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not exactly the same because like Onyeka is like supposed to be the primary role man. At least with Collins, they have the excuse of like he's playing the 4 next to Capela or next to Okongwu, and it's like, all right, and he can shoot. And not this year so far, but he usually can shoot. Okongwu, it's like if he's not running pick and roll and like operating as the role man and like being involved, like he doesn't have the same other elite skills that Capela does. And that's part of the reason why he's not playing as well this year, I think, overall, is that like he's not involved. And you know, him and Trey never have had the best connection necessarily in pick and roll, but they've kind of tried to pair him with DeJounte, and they don't really use each other either because DeJounte, to your point earlier, like his primary on offense is pocket passes, which are better to Okongwu than Capela, but it's not like Onyeka's best thing. And then those pull-up mid-rangers. And I don't know, it was always going to take some time, and I've tried to show that even to myself. I've tried to like be consistent about that, talking about this. Like they were never going to be fully formed on offense so far in October and November, but like all of the worst instincts of what I thought it might be has kind of been what it was so far. And early on in the season, DeJounte had it going, like it was playing really well, and it didn't really show up as much. But as soon as he had kind of a slump, you know, that's when it starts to show up more because they don't do anything off the ball. It's not, we focused on this a lot. Like it was always like, all right, Trey has to play off the ball now, but like Trey hasn't really done that, number one. And number two, DeJounte's not doing anything off the ball either. He's kind of doing the floating because I think he got used to playing on the ball in San Antonio, and it's now that's where his brain is. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but like when you have two guys, like they're definitely playing the worst version of the D'Antoni Rockets, Harden, Paul offense, where like it literally is just the two of them trading off. And that's what you don't want to happen.
Brad, there was a possession against the Magic. I think it was in the second half where AJ Griffin's coming down is like DeJounte Murray's coming down the floor. They call a play for AJ Griffin. AJ Griffin comes off a screen, and then he gets middle and like he gets actual dribble penetration to the point that he causes somebody to help. Unfortunately, the help comes directly behind him. Because DeJounte Murray, after he passes the ball, like DeJounte Murray passed the ball 35 feet at the top of the key and didn't move the entire possession. And so like AJ like gets he does his job, but because DeJounte doesn't move from his spot, he has to pivot and just throw it back to him. And the Hawks have to reset the possession. And it's too much of that. It's too much of guys not finishing offensive possessions. Like they just when they call a play for not them, they're just not moving, and it's clearly a problem. That's why I'm like, does Nate McMillan not want to coach these guys and be like, hey, we have to move? Like we don't have the shooting to just be standing around playing one-on-one basketball. Like this team doesn't have the shooting for this. But they keep playing this way, they're going to keep getting the same results. So, like, to me, I'm like, I'm not very hopeful about this offense. Maybe Bogey will change something. But, like, until those two, like, decide they want to play, you know, relatively normal NBA basketball, if they're going to play this way, then they just got to be better offensively, like, flat out with the possessions that they get. Or this offense that should be at the bare minimum, top 10. Like, if they're not top 10, they're not doing anything. Like, there's no way their defense, even with the improved defense, this defense is not good enough because the perimeter defense just isn't good enough.
As I say, it can't be. And that's the thing. Like, they've kind of papered over it a little bit because the defense has been good to start the season. There's a little bit of noise in the defense, a little bit, not a ton, but like with some opponent shooting luck. And like, I think we definitely agree, broadly speaking, this personnel, they still have to be really good on offense for them to actually be good. Like right now, they're not capital G good as a team because of the offense. The defense is doing its job so far. Like they're not elite defensively, but they can't be elite with this personnel. It's almost not possible. When you have Trey out there, number one, and then you have other guys that are like pretty clear weaknesses. Like, DeJounte is okay, but he's more of a playmaker. Griffin's a rookie. He's not bad for a rookie, but he's still a rookie. He's a negative defensively. Jalen is pros and cons defensively. Like, they don't have the best personnel on defense. This team was built to be this year a little bit less of this, but still offense first, top tier offense, and like just good enough defensively, like be average on defense. And they got the average on defense part down, but they've gone the other direction on offense. And like, I don't think it's necessarily gonna change that much. Like, they're better than this on offense. I'm pretty confident in that. Like, they shouldn't be this bad, I don't think. But and I guess I'll do the devil's advocate case for you, because I wanted to make sure I said this out loud. The numbers with Trey and DeJounte playing together are pretty good. They are. Now, it gets worse as the game goes along, which is funny. Like, literally quarter by quarter, it gets worse. The fourth quarter has been their worst quarter together. But overall, their minutes together, 2-man lineups, have been good. The biggest issue of all, and we can go down this rabbit hole if you want, has been the Murray bench units. Those units do not work. Now, part of that's DeJounte's not playing that well recently, but the other part of it is like, look at what the lineups have been with those units. Like, they don't, like, just put your brain into it. It's like, I had this moment like once a game where I'm like, this lineup just doesn't work. Like, it's not gonna work. Whether it's obviously it's very based on who's available. So like last night was the extreme example. I'm gonna throw that away because so many guys were out. Jalen was out. Even Jalen and Justin were out. Like, they were down everybody. But like, you look up and they're playing Murray and Aaron Holiday or Murray and Trent Forrest, and you got AJ. That's helpful, but it's AJ and Jalen and Onyeka, and like, it's not the worst personnel I've ever seen, but the theory of the case on offense in particular just doesn't work. Like, you only have one shooter, and it's AJ. At least with Trey on the court, Trey and AJ, like, at least you have two shooters. With these Murray minutes, they have one shooter on the court, and that's if AJ's even out there. If AJ's been playing with the starters, maybe he's on the bench. But like, and it's not just that simple, but that's, if you look at the numbers and the lineup data, I don't want to bang the table on it all the time, but like, the lineups that get them killed are when Trey's off the court. And that's not a new problem, but it's also a different problem this time around, because they have the initiator with DeJounte. It's everything else. They don't have the shooting. Like, in past years, they didn't have the initiator. Now they have the initiator, and the supporting guys, sans AJ, just don't make sense. Like, they just don't make sense with him at all.
I wonder where that bench shooting went, bro.
Well, let's just say we were on this early. I know I get accused of being like, it's kind of funny. You'll appreciate this, actually. This year, I've been getting yelled at for being too positive, which I just find hilarious. Like, let's be serious.
Twitter's gotten funny.
But you know what I mean, though? And it's because I'm not trying to fire Nate every night, and I'm not saying that they're the worst team in the league. And I get it. But like, all summer long, it was the opposite. When it was like, why are you hating on the team? We have plenty of shooting. We got DeJounte Murray, so obviously we're better on offense. All these things, and it's like, guys, I'm not just saying stuff to say it. It's the theory of the lineups, and yeah, you can certainly make an argument that maybe I'm too high on player X or too low on player X, but like, they just don't have enough shooting, and that's, thank God they're playing AJ. Can you imagine if Nate was just not playing AJ like he was early in the season? Like, can you imagine how dire it would be? Because
somebody definitely made a call about that one.
I thought so too at the moment. Not necessarily like, but like, it went from AJ
not now, but
now they have to play him clearly.
Back in the earlier days.
Well, and they, you and I have joked about the experimentation thing a couple times, but now he's tweaking some stuff. Like, he's gone to Trent Forrest. That's actually worked. Trent Forrest has been pretty good so far.
I like what Trent Forrest has brought to the team.
And the thing about Trent Forrest is that he knows he can't shoot, and there's a beauty in that, because he just works quickly. Like, I'm guilty of saying like, you need more shooting, and they do. And Trent Forrest does not fix that, but he plays off it. He knows what to do, because his entire life he's not been a shooter, so he knows what to do with it. He makes quick decisions. It's 2 dribbles and a pass, or 2 dribbles and a layup, or whatever. But like, you can tweak all you want to, but I've yet to see a theory of an offensive lineup without Trey on the floor that is going to work. Like, maybe you could just load it up with and stagger Collins a little bit more when he's back and healthy. But Murray plus what are they having on this bench right now is a mess. And like maybe we have to talk about Bogey because Bogey's going to come back hopefully Friday.
The thing about the Collins was Nate stopped staggering Trey and John after a while because like literally John was not touching the basketball when he was with the floor with Murray. Like it was just like, okay, well I'm just burning minutes. Like I'm burning minutes here.
Yeah, they basically chosen to do the intentional stagger is keeping Trey with Clint and Onyeka with DeJounte. And I do get that, but Nate's not going to do another level beyond that. Like, I'm kind of with you. Like, I think I'd like to see Collins play with that bench unit more often when he's healthy, but they got to use him. Like, and if it's Collins and Onyeka, actually quietly, those bets have not worked at all. That Collins Onyeka pairing this year, it's small sample size. That 2-man lineup has not worked. The stats do not like that lineup whatsoever. And like you said, it's probably because they're not really using either one of them correctly in those units.
Yeah. But it's like when you're asking. I mean, it's just the issue with this team. Like, Onyeka comes in the game, they're asking him to be Clint Capela, and he's a different player, and like you have to use them differently, and they're not. And it's like, well, you're going to get a worse version of Capela. Like that's just for the role that they put the box they put a Kongu in. And by box, I mean Trae Young and DeJounte Murray have put him in a box, because he's not allowed. Like I think the thing that's most disappointing is I just feel the lack of confidence from some of these guys sometimes. Like, it just feel like Collins is just pressing on the 3-pointer. That might be a different issue, but like I mean. But considering how confident he is on the defensive end of the floor, like I've never seen Collins this indecisive on stuff, and it's because he doesn't really have a role on this team. Like he's kind of just.
They all know.
Everybody on the team knows it. The general manager knows. Everybody knows it. Like Collins has a role on this team, and it's like it's tough. Like he's in a bad situation. But I feel that way for Jalen Johnson and Kongu too. Like. Jalen is a point forward.
I was going to say, I want to go back to what you said about Okongwu too, because it's the same thing. They're asking Okongwu to largely, maybe not entirely, but largely do the same things that Clint does. And they are polar opposite players. I know they're not, like, they're both have similar offensive strengths and like as a rollman, but like they're very, very different players. Clint's a better screen setter, and all Clint can do on offense is roll to the rim and offensive rebound. We all know this. Okongwu's got ball skills, like actual ball skills. Like they probably need to play through Okongwu in the high post a little bit. And early in the season and in training camp, Nate talked about that, like openly, in a way that was like he seemed excited about it. And then you get to the season and like they don't do any of that anymore. Like that doesn't exist for Okongwu. And like I'm not trying to give him excuses because he's not played all that well this year, just flat out. But part of the reason is you're asking him to just be this guy he's not. Like he can do it. He's not going to get you killed. But if you wanted to develop Okongwu, if part of your mission this year was to make sure that your number 6 overall pick from 2 years ago becomes a standout player, this is not how you would do it. Like you'd have him do some stuff. And Jalen is exactly the same thing. Jalen and John are similar in some ways, but they're also very different. And Jalen Johnson needs to have the ball in his hands to like be his best. And like you could argue maybe this is not a good team for him to be doing that. And I do understand that. But like, he's also the best guy you got at the 4. And right now, how about this? Colin's going to miss 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long. Like, are they going to start Jalen Johnson and have him play the same way? They can't. They're different players.
Man, that's the thing. It's one of those where I'm like, do you just play Justin Holiday at the 4 and try to? But it's like they're not
going to play the 4. As long as Collins is out, you will see Justin Holiday play the 4. So
no, but I mean, like if Collins was healthy, do you just take Jalen out of the rotation because he's been?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you can argue. I know people get mad at me for liking Justin Holiday. It's not even about that. Jalen in the role they're asking him to play on this team when they're clearly in win now mode and not.
Yeah, it's just not
like it doesn't really align because he needs to be able to explore the space. And like if let's say you were Jalen Johnson's agent or Jalen Johnson's family, this is not the team you want him on. You want him to be somewhere else because like he's not able to do what he actually is good at doing. a lot of the time. And you'll see flashes. Like he'll have a quarter every once in a while where he has 2 dunks and he's flying around. But like this is not, they don't play through him like that enough. I think Collins is probably the number one example because of obvious reasons, but Jalen's similar in like all 3 of these guys don't play the way that they probably should play. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way they're using them.
But I feel like they could play like, to me, that all this feels like the coach isn't maximizing the talent he has on the floor because he doesn't know how. Like, he's not innovative. It's not what he does. He doesn't see the whole board. If Trey's not going to be my offensive, like if Trey's not going to dictate terms on how to get everybody, like Trey's not, to me, I'm like, I really wish Trae Young played in in Mike Budenholzer's offensive system, where he's still the guy, like he's still going to be the guy, but there's real offensive structure, and the other 4 guys know what they need to do on every offensive possession. It's too much of Trae Young. Like, granted, like Trae is a genius and he knows what he's doing, but it's too often pointing, telling guys where they need to go, what like we're wasting too much clock. Like
they do play they play way too slow.
Too slow in the fourth quarter, and you're dictating all this. It's like the defense is winning.
My other stat was they're playing at like a 96 pace in the fourth quarter, which is like just comically slow. The other night was the Houston. I think they had 21 possessions in the whole quarter. And it's like, because they're playing the whole shot. And Nate does say it. The funny thing is, like, Nate will say it in post game. He'll say, we need to play quicker. But then they don't do anything different. They just kind of, and I don't want to go back to last year all the time or the year before even, but they were able to get away with having less structure because the guys they had on the roster had clear limitations almost, and also clear strengths. Like Gallo was going to do what Gallo did. He was going to space out, or Gallo was a good fit with Nate because Gallo is an ISO guy. He will run ISOs until the cows come home, and he's good at it. Kevin Huerter will just, if you ask him to, will just space to the corner, and he'll stay there. Like Bogey is a little bit more aggressive and attacking than Huerter is, well, at least pre-Kings Huerter was. But like Bogey also will space to the corner and stand there. Whereas the Hawks don't really have those guys. Like AJ will do it, but now the pieces don't fit as cleanly, which requires you to be a little bit more adaptive as a coach and more, I guess, lay out what you want more clearly. And Nate, he does have strengths. He does. I promise you he does. He's a good culture guy. But what he's not strong at is like design. Like Nate is a big fan of like mismatch hunting, and like I don't want to use the word old school, but it is kind of old school on offense. It just is. Like even the way he talks about it. And it's not like it can't work. We saw last year, again, he was the coach of the team last year, and they were number 2 in the league in offense. But they also had great personnel around Trae. And now it's not as clean.
Gallinari and Bogdanovic on the floor at pretty much all times.
Yeah, they basically almost never played lineups last year that had more than one non-shooter on the floor.
Yep, exactly.
And now they're playing 2 or 3 sometimes. And now DeJounte's not a non-shooter, but DeJounte is just he's below average catch and shoot guy. He's a good mid-range shooter, good guy, like on the ball creator, but as a floor spacer, he's below average. Hunter is fine at it, but he doesn't get guarded like Bogey and Huerter do.
Is he fine at it? Like, well, I know what
if you look at the numbers, like when he actually takes catch and shoots, he does make them. He just doesn't like to shoot them. He's not a big catch and shoot guy.
His frequency is not where it needs to be for a small forward, and like they really need him to.
Well, speaking of which, like he's now hurt too, and we can. I don't know if you want to go down this road, but while I have you, like they're now going to have to navigate at least a week without both Hunter and Collins. That is troublesome. And for me, it's we talked about offense most of this podcast. Those 2 guys not being there on defense is bad news, because for all of Hunter has some weaknesses that drive you crazy, like his passing. He's been good defensively for most of the season. Like he's been, I think, better defensively this year. Collins has been great defensively this year. And you take those guys off the court, and now you're playing some combination of a hobbled first-time returning Bogey, AJ, maybe you go more with Trent Forrest, but Trent Forrest is like 6'3". Like he's not going to be able to play a ton of wing for you. Justin will come back pretty soon. It's a mismatch of parts in a lot of ways. So like it's only a week, hopefully, for both of them, but it'll be at least 2 for Collins. Like, what do you even do? I think the only obvious thing is play AJ a lot. I'm assuming you're about to say that because I actually agree with you. And it's crazy that I'm like advocating for rookie to play a lot of minutes, but they got to play him a lot. But beyond that, like what else? How do you even handle this?
Play AJ. If Bogey's back, maybe you start both of them and play small and try to beat teams offensively. Like
I could see them starting small, but if they start small, I think it's going to be Justin Holiday at the 4.
Yeah, well, yeah. I agree with that.
You know what I mean? Just like I think Nate's not gonna like have it in him to be like, I can't have anybody that plays defense on this unit right now. I feel like Nate's just gonna be like, I have to have somebody out there that I trust defensively, and it's probably gonna be Justin if they do that.
Yeah, they might try Jalen just to see if because I do the minutes. I do feel like Jalen and AJ do have a nice little chemistry.
They do.
So maybe he just plays the young guys and figures it out from there. But
Jarrett Culver,
that's the thing. These aren't great options. Like
Vic Krejci, second half starter. Vic Krejci from Wednesday night. Vic played more minutes than AJ Griffin in the second half last night. I'm sure you enjoyed that.
That was a moment. I mean, but he brought AJ in for one offensive possession with the starters.
It was 2 minutes to go. It got to like 15 again, and they were like, all right, we got to put AJ back in. But no, there have been, for as much as we have joked about the experimental thing, there have been some things that I don't think I've ever seen before rotationally this season. There was that game when AJ played the entire fourth quarter and he hadn't played the whole game. That was one. Last night, the Hawks started in the second half 2 guys who had not played a single rotation minute of the season before last night. And I know Culver came in the first half, but Vit had not played in the rotation all season, not once. And he started the third quarter of the competitive game last night. So
that was incredible because I was like, what? I mean, I'm watching Culver and I'm like, I guess Culver's fine, but Vit's just out here and like they were okay, but like they're playing the Magic. But my whole thing, which I was mad about, I was like, you're probably gonna need AJ to start and like play real minutes. Like, shouldn't he get as much?
I'm sure there was and I joke with you even on Twitter, like I was expecting Nate to say something like, he just wanted to keep everybody in their roles, not knowing that Downriver was going to be out, but like, okay, let's just talk about this. So Friday they played Denver, right? We're recording this podcast Thursday night. They play Denver tomorrow. Hunter's out, Collins is out, Justin Holiday's out. For sure. Now, Bogey and Jalen are questionable as we speak. But, like, AJ has to start on Friday. And I assume AJ's going to play 30-plus minutes, especially without Justin. Like, they don't really have another guy at the 3 even. I mean, Jarrett Culver is an emergency option at any position at this point because of his offense. And he played well last night. He did in Orlando. But I think you even said it too. During the game, even Orlando figured out, like, he's not going to shoot, man. Like, we don't have to guard him.
If he's going to shoot, let him. Because, like, he
can't shoot. It's just what it is. I mean, I don't mean to be mean about it. Like, he can't shoot. And neither can Trent Forrest. And, again, I like both those guys have some strengths. Like, Trent Forrest has played well. He can't shoot. So, you have those 2 guys who are perimeter guys who can't shoot. That's already a challenge in itself. And you have 2 of them. Jalen, you're hoping plays. If Jalen doesn't play, I don't even know how they fill the minutes. I mean, it might be Culver for 30 minutes.
It's going to be Vit time.
Yeah.
Aaron Holiday is just officially. Nate might be done with him.
Well, I was sitting. Shouts to the Magic, by the way, for courts. We were courtside last night. It was nice.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, it was great. But we were right by the Hawks bench, and like I kept kind of glancing at Aaron just to like see if he was. He was locked in. He's a pro. I mean, he has. I don't mean this mean. He has experience not playing in certain spots. Like he was in Phoenix, and wasn't playing. Like he's a pro. But I was surprised Nate put him in the final minute because like, he's a vet. Like usually that's a young guy thing when you put in the guy for the last like literally minute of the game up 20. But as soon as he asked, he warm up off, runs in. But yeah, I think that might have just been the shift there. But he might have to play now because of everything else. That maybe they just get smaller everywhere and goes up down a position because especially tomorrow, if Jalen's not there, like they are incredibly small. And they even tried Okongwu and Kaminsky together last night. All right, that's a wrap on part 1 of this 2-part episode with myself and Tyler Jones. If you missed anything from this week, it's been very busy on the podcast. We definitely encourage you to subscribe to the show, but part 2 should be available in your feeds right now. Go ahead and flip on over to that one, and we'll see you all next time.